Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/IDontWorkHereLady, where Karen seemed to think that everyone is put on Earth to serve them. And in this episode, OP tells a story where Karen absolutely destroys a store over a doll, guys. I hope you enjoy the stories. Don't shake your heads too hard. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. Okay, so I'll try to keep this as short as possible. 2 years ago, I'm an electrician, working building a new grocery store where one had stood recently. The old one was not salvageable and was torn down for the new one. There's no store signs, no parking lot lights, not even a front door. Construction equipment was everywhere, and generally, the only people populating the structure are construction workers. I'm pulling very heavy cable a long distance, and I'm not in a very good mood when enters an entitled C-word, hereby referred to as Karen. I've just pulled my rope when someone grabs my shoulder and pulls me around. I respond with a rather loud, "What the F?" And Karen says, "Excuse me? How dare you use that language to a customer?" I say to her, "Who are you and why the F did you feel the need to grab my shoulder?" Karen says, "Well, apparently, it's the only way to get anyone's attention around here. I'm looking for whatever stupid thing she was looking for." And she says, "I need it now." I tell her, "Ma'am, this is not a store. As you can see, we're..." She then interrupts me and says, "I'm just looking for..." And that's when I stop her and say, "Please, shut up and listen. You are in the middle of a construction zone. So take 2 seconds to pull your head out of your butt and look around you. There's no food anywhere. There's no shelves, everyone's wearing hard hats, and you can't be in here. Now turn around and go back the way you came before you get hurt or killed." Hearing me say that, Karen just stares at me for a second, and it finally clicks in her brain. She then takes a look around, turns around, and very carefully walks back to the front, as if now she's scared she might get hurt. I go back to pulling my cable, and I watch her get to the front door, hoping she doesn't trip over something. At the front, a man, presumably her husband, is standing there. I hear him say, "Well?" She then mumbles something, and I see him shaking his head and say, "I effing told you." And once again, I'm amazed how some people are still alive. Oh my goodness, guys. I love how the husband was like, "I effing told you." Like the poor man probably tried to tell his wife dozens of times that it's not a store, before finally giving up and letting her do her thing. And honestly, sometimes you just gotta let stubborn people figure it out for themselves, right? And how some people are that clueless is beyond me. And guys, apparently it happens often. This person shares their experience and they say, "Some people are just clueless, not entitled." Story time. I was a construction foreman doing a renovation on an open supermarket. We had to work in an aisle that required a scissor lift. So my guys get set up and we blocked off the ends of the aisle with caution tape. Picture multiple rows that you couldn't go under or over. I went to see how my guys were making out when I witnessed an elderly lady tearing the tape, walk down the aisle, and reach through the lift to get an item off the shelf. When she came towards me, I asked what she thought she was doing. Could she not see the tape? And the woman's response was, "It said caution," and I was very careful. I couldn't argue with her. And this person writes this: "I was working in a massive expansion to a mall that had been delayed for years, but was finally making significant progress. As such, someone upstairs had the great idea to have us remove the barrier between the old mall and the new mall, so the public could watch us like a zoo exhibit. So instead of a wall, there was caution tape and a big danger do not enter sign. So yeah, I was doing something, probably hauling rhino board, when I noticed a boy, no more than 4 years old, shuffling by, kicking off his flip-flop and then chasing it to put it back on. Alarmed, I then see his mom, 200 yards back, casually pushing another child in a stroller as they wander through the active construction site. Unfortunately, I work directly for the mall, not a contractor, so I politely, if not urgently, informed her that she and her family needed to leave as soon as possible. And the woman says, "Oh, I thought they opened this part of the mall." And I say, "Look around you, lady. Everyone's wearing hard hats, safety glasses, and steel-toed boots. It's not safe for you and your kids to be here. You need to come with me." So as I'm saying this, someone hauling ass with a pallet jack of tile nearly clips her child, while she remained oblivious. I escorted them out of the area, where she had to duck under the caution tape to get back into the old mall. This happened 7 years ago. Up until 4 years ago, I lived around the corner from a coffee shop. I would stop in on my way to work daily. Some weekends, I'd walk over for a cup of coffee. They always left a broom and a dustpan on the patio behind the trash can. On the weekends, when I went over for coffee, if they looked busy, I would grab the broom. I would then tidy the patio and the sidewalk in front of the doors before I went inside. I usually got a free day-old coffee offered to me for helping out. So after 3 years, all the staff knew me, the manager and the owner as well. One day, I walk up, I look in the windows and grab the broom. There's a big rush inside, and I don't like people normally. I like crowds even less. So I take my time sweeping, just looking in the windows. Once it empties out, I go inside and sit at the counter. An employee brings me a coffee and we start chatting. After 5 to 10 minutes, Karen comes stomping in, and she's pissed. Karen walks right up to me and she taps me on the arm, and I look up and say, "Yes?" The woman then screams in my face and says, "We've been waiting for you." I say to her, okay, why? She then continues screaming at me and says, "Come outside right now and look. We need you to sweep the patio where we want to sit. It's filthy." At that, I just say, "Oh yeah, I don't work here, sorry." Karen then says, "Don't lie. We watched you sweeping the patio. Now come out and sweep where we want to sit. I will not ask again." At this point, the employee says she really doesn't work here. The employee then looks out the windows at the patio and says, "It's clean and tidy out there already." Karen says, "No, it's not. The table is nasty." The woman then grabs my shirt and she tries to drag me out to clean her table. She says to me, "You know what? You need to come with me right now. You are so lazy." She then yells at me that she sees me cleaning the patio every single weekend, so I must work here, and that she's sick of practical jokes that kids play nowadays. That's when I tell Karen, "Look, lady, the manager's a friend of mine, so leave me alone or I'll have you banned." Karen retorts with, "Well, I know the owner, and I'll have you and the manager fired." By this point, the employees decided to contact the manager. The manager shows up and sees the lady grabbing my arm and yelling that she's gonna have me fired for being lazy and rude. Manager says, "Lady, let this girl go. You'd better tell me why you're manhandling her before I call the cops." Karen then screams and says, "What the F is wrong with you people? That's her job. She's refusing to come clean my table." Manager tells her, "Yeah, because she doesn't work here." Karen then says, "I'm calling the owner. You're all gonna be fired." The manager then tells her, "Okay, I'm so done with this. You've assaulted her, insulted her, threatened her, all in the presence of a witness. I'm calling the police." Karen then looks at me and says, "I don't understand why you and everyone here keeps lying about you working here. Just get out there and tidy the damn table. It's that damn simple." Now, all of this has gone down over maybe 15 minutes. A cop car pulls up and a cop comes out into the shop. Karen starts screaming, saying, "Oh good, I'd like to press charges against this person. She's assaulted me and she's not doing her job." The cop says he'll look into that, and they go into the back office. 10 minutes later, the cop and the manager come out, and the cop takes Karen by the arm, and he says, "You're under arrest for assault, harassment, and uttering threats." The woman was taken away, and I got free coffee for a while. Wow guys, I'm actually surprised it escalated to an arrest. And really, was it worth it, Karen? Probably not. And guys, I've said this before, even if OP was an employee, what makes you think that grabbing them and pulling them to a table to clean it will make them want to clean it? That is super disrespectful and a great way to get smacked if you ask me. So here's some backstory. I'm a federal government employee who just finished a successful business trip. I'm flying home and I had a layover in a large international airport. I had a really long layover, and I had gotten a bite to eat. I had no notifications of my gate being moved from one side of the airport to the other. I and several other unlucky passengers had gone to the original gate, and we sat wondering where the plane was, as it was time to board. Finally, we find an employee who tells us the gate was changed and is now boarding, and it's set to take off in 8 minutes. So we all take off sprinting for the correct gate. I get to the gate and tried to pull up my boarding pass on my phone. It wouldn't work. I made a few more attempts to pull it up, but that didn't work either. The gate clerk then asked me to wait, and she would print one up. I was the last to board the plane, but I made the flight. And it should be smooth sailing from here, right? But boy, was I wrong. My seat was towards the rear of the plane. As I walk down the aisle towards my seat, I encounter a rather rotund, angry man. His leg was sticking out of the aisle, and I didn't see it as I had my carry-on bag in front of me. I bumped his leg. And with that I say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't see your leg." The angry man says, "You should be sorry. Watch where the F you're going from now on." I just reply, I apologize again, but could you please move your leg so I can get to my seat? The guy scowls at me, but he does move his leg. So with that, I place my bag under the seat and buckle my belt. After about 15 minutes, we still have not left the gate. The passengers are starting to wonder why. That's when the pilot comes on and he tells us there will be a delay, as the plane still needs to fuel and there's no fuel trucks available at the time. It would be a 30-minute wait. Cue the angry man saying, "What the F? Is everyone here so effing stupid they can't fuel an effing plane?" That's when a flight attendant comes over and says, "Sir, I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but..." The angry man interrupts her and says, "I don't give an F how sorry you are. This is absolutely outrageous and I demand compensation." After 45 minutes, we finally get the fuel, and the plane should have departed an hour and a half ago, and it's now almost 10 p.m. A few rows ahead of me was apparently a non-English speaking couple with their 3-year-old grandson with them. The boy was getting tired and frustrated. He's crying, but he's in a seat, so the plane left the gate. We had been away from the gate less than a minute, and he decides to throw a tantrum. He undid his belt, jumped over Grandma and into the aisle, and he starts running down the aisle. The attendant sees the lad, and she notifies the cockpit. Grandma catches the kid, and she puts him back in his seat with a belt on, which he immediately undoes again, and he runs screaming up and down the aisle. This time, Grandpa catches him, and he returns him to his seat and puts the belt back on him. The kid is still screaming and crying, but he's seated. 2 more minutes go by, and this kid's head pops up over his seat. This time, the attendant calls the pilot, and the plane stops. The kid then bolts out of his seat again. The attendant tries to explain that this is not allowed, but she doesn't understand. Neither does Grandpa. The attendant then asked if anyone can communicate with this couple. A few try, but they don't seem to understand. The pilot decides to remove the family from the plane. So back to the gate we go. We wait 25 minutes for a representative from the airline to come and remove the family. So the family was removed, and we finally got on our way. It's now 11:45, 15 minutes after the plane was originally slated to land, and it was a 3-hour flight. The attendant began the drink service for the flight after 30 minutes. Once again, the angry man's leg was in the aisle. The poor frazzled flight attendant accidentally bumps his leg, and the angry man loses it and says, "What the F is wrong with you people? This whole damn trip has been a total pile of horse crap. I want your effing name and your manager's effing name." The attendant tells him, "My name is so-and-so, and you can call this number in the morning, but I still need to finish the drink service in the back. So could you please move your leg so I can get by?" The angry man moves his leg, but he keeps grumbling. He stands up in the aisle and he says, "I'm not finished talking to you yet." The guy starts to move down the aisle aggressively towards the flight attendant. That's when I jump into the aisle because I'm tired of this obnoxious fool. I say to him, "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" The angry man shouts at me and says, "Sit the F down, who the F are you?" I tell him I'm the person sitting behind you, and I just want to let you know that you missed a perfect opportunity back there. The angry man says, "What do you mean?" And I say to him, "You should have asked the flight attendant for some cheese." The angry man says, "Cheese? What the F are you talking about? Why would I want some effing cheese, you idiot?" I then reply, "To go with the wine you've been having since you've got on this plane." You could hear some people chuckling around me. The angry man's face turns red with anger, and he screams, "I want to know your name. I want to report you to the airlines." I then say to the man in a voice just above a whisper, "Sir, I work for the federal government. You really don't want to know my name, but I would love to know yours." I then smile very nicely at him, and I could see the angry man's face lose all color as he scurries back to his seat, and he sits down quietly. He politely addressed the attendant as ma'am for the rest of the flight. After we were landing and were getting off the plane, the attendant thanked me for what I did. She also wanted to know what I said to him. I just winked at her and told her to have a better day tomorrow. Guys, I love how OP shut him down with one line. The guy probably thought OP was an air marshal or a federal agent of some sort, which is awesome. And this person comments, "I'm curious what you do for the federal government." I could try to use the same line, but if it came out that I was a postal worker, I doubt I'd get a whole lot of cooperation. So I hope this story fits, as there was a brief encounter with someone who didn't work where I do. I work at a local supermarket, where I work as a stock clerk. Like many supermarkets, every week we have a discount on certain items or specials. Like when you buy 2 to 3 items from the same brand, you get a special product from that brand. The week this happened, when you bought 3 items from this kid's brand, you would get this rather creepy looking doll. And this is basically what the story is based around. And oh boy am I glad we don't offer kids' toys with these products anymore. So before going on, I never thought something like this would happen to me, but here we go. It did. I was working in the afternoon on a Thursday like usual, when a kid walks by slowly. I of course don't think anything of this as I'm just doing my job. She walks by about 3 times, and the 4th time, she asked me if the dolls are out of stock. I explained to her that currently they are out of stock, but that more will be coming that evening. She asked how late, and I told her they'd probably arrive after closing because of a delayed shipment, so she would have to wait until the next day. With that, she walks away to her mom with a quite sad face, and I did feel bad for her. I continued working. I didn't really think about it anymore. So fast forward a bit, around 2 hours later. It's almost closing time, and I was pretty tired, and this is where Karen comes in without her daughter. And she looked angry. The mother stomped straight towards me, and she quite angrily asked me why I told her daughter that she couldn't have one of those dolls. Me, being tired, look at her with a confused face, and after processing the question, I do remember the kid that asked for the doll. So I say, yes, but... Karen then interrupts me and says, "Do you know you made my daughter cry? She's been crying for over an hour now." I reply, "I'm so sorry for upsetting your daughter, but the dolls are out of stock, and they won't arrive until..." She then cuts me off again and says, "I don't believe you. Do you know what it's like to deal with a crying child? Get me a manager right now. I need one of those dolls." I say to her, "Ma'am, believe me, we're out of those dolls as they're a promotion. We do have more coming after close, but the store closes pretty soon," and the woman stops me right there again and says, "I want to look in the back. I do not believe you." She was pretty much screaming at the moment. I then see a customer who's in the aisle with us looking over, and Karen screams at him, "You, go get your manager." The customer, a younger man, just throws his hands in the air and he says, "I'm not an employee. And no, just leave her alone. She clearly says that doll is not in stock." So this is where I make my mistake. I tell the customer it's okay. And me, attempting to de-escalate the situation, just bring the Karen to the back, where we keep the dolls, so she can see for herself that there's none left. Now, I normally never let people into this section because it's only for employees. But I didn't want her to go super Karen, and she wanted to check the back, so I thought this would make her happy. I then grab one of the stock terminals. It's a small device that we use to keep track of the stock in the warehouse. I then show her that there's currently no dolls in the store. And before I can show her the order we placed for the dolls, she grabs the terminal and she throws it on the ground. She was getting violent. I immediately ask my boss to come to the warehouse through my earpiece. In my mind, Karen can't touch me or cause me harm because A, that would be assault, and B, there's cameras everywhere. But apparently Karen doesn't care. She proceeds to kick over the small shelves of product standing in the warehouse. She also starts grabbing 6-packs of beer and bottles of wine and smashing them on the floor, which made a horrible mess. After about a minute of constant fear in me, my boss and my 3 team leaders and a security guy arrive in the warehouse to take a look at the situation. My boss was not happy with the situation. Security then grabs Karen and basically pins her on the ground with nowhere to move. And that's when the police are called. Within 20 minutes, the police arrive at the warehouse. I was surprised the woman didn't attempt to kick or slap anyone. She just laid on the ground. 2 policemen are guided to the office, while the 3rd and my boss are in the back of the store. After 10 minutes, which felt like an eternity for me, the policemen come back, and one of them put the woman in handcuffs. Meanwhile, the woman's giving me death glares, and she's saying the reason she did all this is because I hit her kid and refused to admit it. The officers probably already know that that's not the case. I was struggling to find the right words because I've never been in a situation like this, and I was on the verge of crying. I told them that they need to check the camera footage from 2 hours before this, and there was no way that I'd do something like that. The policemen just took the woman away, probably off to the police station where she deserves to be. My boss did compliment me on handling the situation, but he told me to never bring anyone into the back again. When I came home, I told my parents the entire story, and they were shocked. They asked me if I wanted to continue working there, and I did. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the place itself, just very rarely the people that buy stuff there. My boss later made the rule of not doing this with dolls and children's toys anymore because this has happened a few times before, although not this bad. It did solve the problem of entitled Karens, and I've never seen one since. Yeah, that woman went completely nutso over a doll, guys. Like, it's just crazy how her thought process was, my child's been crying for hours because of you, so I'm gonna destroy the store because you guys happen to be out of stock. Like, what about teaching your child that they can wait, Karen? And help them to understand that they'll get the doll, just not now. I would say that's a much better option than getting hauled off to jail. Absolutely wild, guys. And I do agree with OP's boss totally. There's never a good reason to bring a customer to the back stock area at all, especially one that's super angry. So I must have a face made for retail because people often walk up to me in stores and ask me for help, even when I'm wearing clothes that should make it obvious that I'm not an employee. Some years ago, it was even worse. I worked for a company that used a gold polo shirt with black trim as a part of the uniform. And everywhere I went, people thought I was the assistant manager. Most of it was harmless questions like, do you have this item in stock, or where's your cigarettes? I'd be elbow deep in the middle of taking something apart with tools scattered all around me. Or I'd be on a ladder with my head above the ceiling tiles and people would still assume I worked there. What surprised me was how condescending, demanding, and rude some people are. When someone was especially rude, I'd play along with them for a moment before pointing out that I wasn't an employee, just to embarrass them a bit. The worst was some little old lady who looked like she hasn't cracked a smile since the Eisenhower administration was in power. I had made some repairs to equipment on site at a Kmart, and I was waiting by the customer service/return desk for the manager to sign off. That's when this old bat walks in and she looks at the busy return desk and the long line, and then at me standing there holding a clipboard, and she starts heading my way with a purpose. As the woman got closer, I start to head her off by saying, no, I don't work here. But she yells at me to, quote, shut up, Sonny, and listen to me for a minute. And to this day, I'm not sure if I shut up because she told me to shut up, or if my mouth stopped working due to the shock of someone using the word Sonny outside of a sitcom. The woman then begins ranting about her last trip to Kmart. She starts complaining about everything in the store, which to her were atrocities. When she wound down for just a second, I recovered enough to try to tell her once more that I was not an employee. She just shrieked at me louder to shut up. So I just shut up and I let her go a bit longer. The third time I tried to say something, she actually tried to put her withered hand on my mouth. I fended her off by holding my clipboard in front of my face like a shield until she stopped. At this point, something my grandpa told me popped into my head. He always said, if you encounter someone that angry, just shut up and let them run down. They aren't gonna hear anything you say anyways, so you trying to defend yourself only makes things worse. And the best of all, if you calmly stand there and let them rant, they'll usually make a fool out of themselves in front of everyone. He was a smart man. So I just stood there looking at her until she finally wound down and there was an awkward pause. The old bat then says to me, well? I say to her, well what? She then says, well, aren't you going to help me? I say to her, no, I don't even work. And just like that, I'm interrupted, and she says, then what do you suggest I do then? Me, finally losing my cool and getting a bit loud, say, if you want my opinion, ma'am, I'd go talk to someone who works here. It was at this moment that three things happened. She finally shut up. I realized how quiet it was, and then someone laughed. When I glanced back to the service desk, 4 employees, all the customers there, as well as other people shopping near there had heard, and they stopped to stare. When I looked back, the old girl was staring at the logo on my shirt, and for the first time, realized it said something other than Kmart. The woman then opened her mouth without saying anything, and then pivoted neatly and she went straight out the front door. I wish I could say I planned to set her up, but she did that all by herself. See, this is why you always let someone finish talking, guys. Like, if that Karen had not interrupted OP 3 times and tried to put her wrinkly, disgusting hands on his mouth to shut him up, she wouldn't have been embarrassed like that. And that, my friends, brings us to another NFR/IDontWorkHereLady. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/entitledpeople episode, where OP's new neighbor decides to harass her and tries to steal her land, and it backfires hard, guys. Go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.